for joining us again. And if it's your first webinar with us, welcome. We're really looking forward to this session today, and yeah, happy to be running another great, insightful session, taking a look at digital, the digital age of financial crime. We'll get started in about 2 or 3 minutes. So if you are just joining, that's perfect. We want to give some time for everyone to join. So what is always really helpful as you are jumping on is just to let us know that the chat works. So although we'll run through some really great presentation today, we also want this to be an interactive session where relevant. So it's good to know that the chat works. If people can just drop us a line, maybe let us know which part of the globe you're joining us from today, who you want to win tonight's football, England, Argentina. Please say England. And yeah, maybe the temperature. I think it's a global heat wave is the way we're describing it as the moment, where Canada, the UK, that when we're on like the same wavelength, that's always scary for one of us. I think my colleagues in Toronto have like got, it feels like 47 degrees or something today, apparently, because of some of the humidity. Yeah, if I look a little bit warm, it's because we've had I call this a heat wave for the past few weeks as well. So yeah, if you can drop us a quick line in the chat, it'd be great to know. I'm just going to join as well on there and make sure it's muted. But yeah, hello. Pamela, I can see Pamela's on there. Hi, Pamela. Great to have you back. Like I say, if you're just joining us now, we will give it a couple of minutes before we do some intros and get started on the call. But thanks for jumping on again today. Vancouver, Canada. Yeah, I'm not sure what the weather's like there on the other side of the country, but hopefully it's in. Go Spain. Ja, I thought we were going to get along. I will say it was brilliant. I was supporting Spain last night, so I think we were all potentially expecting France to win the World Cup. I was, but yeah, they weren't there last night, so. Yeah, sorry to hear that, Jer, but yeah, hopefully there are some more England supporters on here today, but no pressure. So yeah, as we get started, I will just introduce myself. So yeah, my name is Toby. I work here at Altia and look after our customers, our new customers coming on board, and our old ones who've been with us for a while. But these webinars are more focused on just a space for investigative minds to get together and discuss ideas. We like to bring on guest speakers, and Julie, although a regular guest of these webinars, we've also luckily met at some of the events, like the cybercrime event in Calgary, which was great earlier this year. And yeah, really luckily got you to join this webinar today. We'll come to you in a moment. I just want to introduce my colleague as well, SJ. I'll hand over to SJ just for a quick intro. So yeah, SJ, I'll hand over to you to just say hello.
Yeah, thank you very much, Toby. Good to see so many UK supporters coming up on the chat. Happy days. That's what we like to see. Yeah, thank you. I'm SJ, most people call me, but my name is Sarah. I'm Director of Product at Altia, so sit across the suite of our products, unsurprisingly. So not just the fraud tools, also the case management tools, investigative tools, OSINT, Transcribe, intelligence, and all the covert suite of products that we offer as well. So in terms of me, I'm probably more of an SME. I've spent a huge amount of my career, 3 decades, as you can see, being in the stressful situations for a very long time. And yeah, 30 years of my career in the intelligence world. The first 10 years of that was in the British Military Intelligence Corps in the army, and then followed through into the intelligence community for the next 17. So very much an SME, and moved inside as a senior manager and got more involved in technology, and naturally transitioned to product and started to deliver, cloud technology to support those operations on the ground. So yeah, and now living in Nottingham in the UK, back where my family are, and that's one of the reasons that I moved to Altia, to be honest, to be close to my family. So yeah, good to be here and nice to meet you all, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, SJ. It's great to have you on. And yeah, I look forward to hearing more from you throughout the webinar. And Julie, we'll hand over to yourself again. Thank you very much for joining. And yeah, we'll hand over to you for a quick intro, and we'll jump into today's topic as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for inviting me. I really enjoy the webinars, and I'm glad to be the one presenting today. So yeah, basically, I have a background in criminology, and then I started working in investigation. I'm based in Halifax currently, but the accent is from Quebec, so I'm a French speaker. So yeah, I've worked as a tax fraud investigator for a while, and now I work as a fraud investigator for the federal government. So one of the agencies, I'm not with law enforcement directly, but I enforce some of the laws for the different agency that we have. So I'll be sharing a little bit of my perspective. So what I've seen over the last few years of my career, also what I've seen as a criminologist. So I like to see the human side of things. So I'll share a bit of that. And I have a little bit of experience in international affairs. So I like to connect the dots and show a bit of a big picture of what's going on. So
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. And yeah, I can see the chat starting to get a little bit lively, which is really, really good. Hello to Kay. Hey, okay. Thanks all for joining. Like at any point in the webinar, you can ask questions. I'll put those questions to the panel or to Julie and to SJ. And yeah, we can talk about those. Stephen, great to have you back as well from Calgary as well. A couple from, well, Calgary, Alberta, and Edmonton, Alberta. So yeah, brilliant. So yeah, Julie, we'll hand over to you. We've got some slides to run through, and yeah, we'll jump into questions throughout. So yeah, if anyone's got points they want to raise, questions, yeah, feedback, let us know as we go through. But yeah, let's jump into it.
sounds good. And if we have any expert in a room, feel free to add to it. Like I said, I'm expert of my own field, but not of all fields. So I welcome any feedback or input if they have more experience in that area. So like I said, I have a background that varies from criminology to diplomatic strategic affair, fraud, financial crime. International affairs have been my thing for a while at the same time as criminology. So I mix a little bit of both in what we're gonna review today. I work as a tax compliance officer, like I said, tax fraud investigator. So I was only enforcing those laws, doing production orders, search warrant for Revenue Quebec back then. The agency that I'm working for right now, Service Canada, I'm not going to talk on behalf of my employer and couldn't speak about specific case that I'm working on right now, but yeah, so I work for the federal government right now. So let's have a look at actually the scale of the problem. So I know there's going to be a lot of people from different area in the world. So we have different perspective. It doesn't affect every country the same way. So what I focus today is a little bit more North America, which is the topic here. My expertise would be in the Canada side of things. So I'll show a little bit about the US side, but I'm definitely not the expert on the US politics. But yeah, in Canada, currently, the fraud losses are estimated around $704 billion in 2025. That's the latest statistic that we got. And we have to consider in that 5 to 10% only is actually reported. So for many different reasons, let's say for scams, sometimes people are ashamed. They're not necessarily willing to go to police. Sometimes they feel like even though they go to the police, there's not going to be much that they could do, so they wouldn't go and report. So there's multiple reasons. Or if it's smaller amounts, people just wouldn't necessarily want to go through the hassle of like the whole legal system. So we have to imagine the amount being about like 10 times what we see right now. So same thing for the US. They have a way bigger stat, which is the 16 billion for cybercrime losses. And again, you have to take into consideration that every agency doesn't necessarily take the same methodology to do their stats as well. But on a broader scale, what's estimated right now, it's about like almost, let's say almost 2 trillion annually that is lost and laundered. So it's massive. And it's just exponential. So it's just going to go bigger and bigger. Like I've seen some projection and it's just crazy. Like the amounts were like, I think it was like 150 million in 2020 for Canada that I was looking at earlier, and we're like 700 right now. So it's just crazy. So I just want to do a little overview of like how financial crime has evolved. I know a lot of us might know, but basically when we picture financial crime, a lot of people would just see the traditional drug trafficking or cash laundering, big bags of money going on. But yeah, so in the 1990s, 2000s, it has become more identity fraud, all the phishing and card fraud. I know myself when I was at Revenu Quebec, I had a lot of identity theft going on, so that was one of the big things. Later on in 2010s, we started seeing fraud as a service, ransomware as a service, and that's where we saw the different type of crimes being a little bit more specialized. So people were leveraging, they already started leveraging AI in the later 2020s. But yeah, cryptocurrency started in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, the Bitcoin. So we started seeing a little bit more of that. When I was at Revenu Quebec, we saw some cryptocurrency, but we couldn't really figure out how it was working or how to enforce it. So it was quite the puzzle back then. But now we've evolved a little bit. But now what we're seeing more and more, and that our judicial system is trying to keep up with, is the AI-enabled crimes. So that's the part that I'm going to focus a little bit more today, because that's a growing issue. So digital crime in general is a massive issue, but the fact that AI is making it faster, more scalable, more accessible for just anyone to use it, is going to become a national security problem. So all the deepfakes, synthetic identity, and AI-enabled scam, we're going to talk about it later. But yeah, these are the main concerns right now. And just as a broad picture, so all the different crimes, we used to categorize the crimes separately to, oh, I'm investigating fraud, I'm investigating cybercrime, organized crime, but nowadays they're all linked. So in some ways, you would have fraud going on that is managed by organized crime, that is conducted online through ransomware. So they're all mixed. So when we used to be expert of one type of investigation or crime, now we kind of have to know a little bit about everything. We still have different experts in investigation teams. So I know that like myself in my agency, we don't necessarily have a cybersecurity team, but I know that some different agency like Revenu Quebec, they used to have a cyber investigation team. So that really depends on the type of agency. And I know like law enforcement has them all. Otherwise, why the traditional fraud controls are losing their effectiveness? Basically, the issue right now is that the way we were assessing people's identity, the way we were confirming their identity, is no longer usable, if we can say. So the way we were doing our KYC or identification, now with the deep fakes, we're running into issue that, or like just AI, so we're running into issue that all IDs could be fake, all video calls could be staged with deep fake, any vocal identification could be staged with voice cloning. So we're having issue with identity. And the other way is actually trust has been industrialized. Fraud is now across different type of platforms. So that makes it more complicated for investigator as well, because you could have fraud starting on one platform and then it migrates to a different one and then it uses blockchain. So it's really hard for investigator not just to keep up, but legally speaking, to be able to go as fast as the criminals, because they would have to go through protection orders to be able to deal with the investigation. So that's pretty much it. The big thing that I want to
jump in as well. Sorry, Julie. I always hate to cut your flow, but no, I was just thinking on the previous slide as well. It started me thinking about things I've heard recently as well. But it's like how all the crime types are now seen together. So like where people may used to specialize in running a scam operation or running an online fraud, because of like things like crypto and the ability to launder money so beautifully through cryptocurrency, it's kind of like bringing a lot more things together. So, and something I keep hearing from like specialist crime is, you know, if someone's involved in human trafficking, they're probably involved in scams, they're probably involved in frauds, they're probably involved in X, Y, and Z. And I'm seeing now it's not just shining light on those other fraud types, but other crime types. It's bringing fraud more into the front, because actually, like, this is a solid link between different criminal organizations, and I just found that really interesting. I've heard that at recent events, and I wanted to share that.
Yeah, so we used to think about financial crime being its own separate thing, but now financial crime is literally linked to every types of crimes, because in a way they're either like enabling that type of crime, or they're the benefit that they're gaining from that type of crime. So we're gonna jump into it with a scam compound, so I can go a little bit faster on these ones.
Julie,
but yeah,
I think it also kind of contributes towards that I suppose disruption tactics as well, right? Sometimes you can't always prosecute for the thing that you're going after them for, but actually fraud is often not easier because of the complexities that you've described, but sometimes it is easier than the prosecution case that you're trying to go for. So it's also used as a disruption technique and tactic, which is why I think it's more prevalent sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about it, the fraud being used as a geopolitical weapon, if we can say, because the way the money is drained from a country is actually kind of a geopolitical issue, because a country is being targeted, their money is drained, but the benefit is going to a different country. So any country could use that as like financial warfare or something like that. So that's something I found really interesting. And on that note, actually, those are the global criminal services, or actually the different areas in the world where we see a lot of crime going on. So a lot of you might have heard about the Eastern Europe, where it's often known for the ransomware groups. They have a lot of like dark web marketplace as well. What we've seen most or heard most recently would have been the Southeast Asia with the scam compounds. That has been the big thing going on. Human trafficking, like you said, Toby. And otherwise, that's pretty much where pig butchering is mostly going on. There's still pig butchering a little bit everywhere. Like I've heard about the Dubai scam call center that has been taken down. There's a few one elsewhere, but the main one we talk about is often Myanmar these days. China is also linked with some of those crimes, especially more on the moving the money around type of thing. So there are more the underground banking going on, the over-the-counter desk, or the way to launder the money. That's where they would usually do it. Otherwise, North Korea is also being known quite a lot for the cryptocurrency theft. That's mostly the thing we've heard about them, like the thing that they specialize in. So I don't know, you might have heard about like those fake job interviews that they have like those deep fake, and it's pretty much all of like North Korean worker that have like used ID of other nationality. So yeah, that's a big one going on in North Korea. But yeah, basically that doesn't mean there isn't any criminal here, but that means that we've seen a growing part of the criminals being there. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that the chat's again popping off with people saying, hey, there's loads of fraud over here, there's loads of fraud over there. I think what's interesting though is like Jay, you mentioned Florida. You know, I work with different law enforcement teams in Florida currently, and I know there's a big challenge with like elder fraud. So like it does make sense geographically where the fraud type is. Like we know Florida almost jokingly it's one of my favorite states, I will say, but there's lots of retirement places there, but that makes it the perfect stomping ground to run elder fraud scams. And then we look at these elements where sadly the human trafficking element comes in, and there are correlations between the parts of the world where we see more of that opposed to maybe more other elements. Curtis, you mentioned around the building compounds in Cambodia. I think you're going to learn a little bit more maybe today about that. So
I'm going to highlight Julie, that eventually.
Your slides are like doing that fantastic thing that a good presentation does, where everyone gets excited and you're there like, let me go to the next slide because I'm about to show you this.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, just to continue a little bit on that, like I know a lot of the crimes are targeting elderly. So a lot of the scams, if you go in the IC3 and you go look a bunch of the stats, like the main group being targeted is like the 60 plus for the like investment scams. So they've been the one like that are targeted the most. But basically North America is usually the one where like the victim would be selected for the wealth concentration, because a lot of people are retiring their retirement savings, so it's appealing for criminals. But just to add to it, the main organized group are from the country that I'm showing right there. But often what would happen is going to be that they're going to be having affiliates. So they're going to have lone actors in our countries, but they would affiliate themselves with those countries. So that's often what you could be seeing. So they would be located here sometimes, yeah. Okay, so let's just jump in a little bit. So yeah, a couple of reasons why people would offend. I know often we're just talking about the criminal, but not necessarily the reason why they're offending. So that's my criminology take on that. So we have a couple theory. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but just for your knowledge, usually the reason why people would offend is pretty much, and that's the big thing with digital crime, is because they have the sense that they're never going to get caught because you have the distance with the screens. So it's accessible. They don't feel like there's any monitoring or consequences. And they don't necessarily see the consequences of their action because they don't necessarily see the damages into the victim's life. So I think that's something that countries would have to reinforce at some point, to leverage that prevention and raising awareness to try to educate people on, yes, we're going to catch you, and those are the consequences of your action. Because right now, the reason why people are offending that much online, like teenagers are getting recruited in ransomware groups, it's often because it's just accessible. They could use a little bit more money. They don't think they're going to get caught. So we have to do like disruption campaign, or like do a little bit more of like showing that people are getting caught and that they're going to be the next if they're not stopping it right now. So that's something that I'm pretty interested in as a prevention part of all that. But yeah, so when I was talking about cybercrime or financial crime becoming a criminal business, it's pretty much like all the as a service. So ransomware as a service, fraud as a service, scam as a service, malware as a service. So just a little bit of explanation on that is that usually you can go on the dark web and buy already kits. So you would go online and you could just buy on the dark web. You could buy malware that you could just have the 101 how to like share malware, and you're gonna have literally everything hands-on for you, and you even have sometime customer service. So they're gonna help you do it. So that's why we're saying that the financial crime is now like literally a business, because you would have different layers. You would have the one that are building the malware. You would have the one that are infiltrating businesses and then selling the access afterward on the dark web. And then you would have that lone actor saying, hey, why not? I'm gonna like propagate that malware in a business and get the money out of it. And then you have people that are going to be dealing with the laundering, and then they just split all the profits afterwards. So it's literally people that don't necessarily know each other come together to perpetrate those crimes, and then they just leave with the profits. So that's why we're talking about criminal business models.
That I'm just going to jump in because I think that's fascinating to hear. It's kind of, it sounds really bad, but my mind has just gone straight to like a frustrated hacker on a customer service call being like, this hasn't worked. You told me this was going to work and it hasn't been set up properly. But I think joking aside, it shows the scale, right? And I think that's what your initial part of the presentation was alluding to, is that the scale now is just exponentially growing. So yeah, that's I've not heard about that before, so that was fascinating to hear.
Yeah, so that slide pretty much just shows a little bit of what I was just saying. They have their different roles. They're doing their different roles within the grand scheme of things, and in the end, they're just like doing more and more crimes. But yeah, you have the human traffickers, social engineering, recruiters, money mule. I'll talk about the money mule if the term doesn't ring a bell. I'll talk about it a little bit later. But yeah, those are the different roles that you could be seeing. So I'm gonna just go quickly over ransomware. I don't expect anyone to be necessarily expert in ransomware, and I don't certainly want to dig too much into it. So pretty much just ransomware is, like I was explaining, people would use vulnerabilities within companies. They would do social engineering to get access to an employee through business email compromise. They would have someone click on a phishing like email. They would get a malware into the company. And then they would just like get access to the data. Sometimes they would stay there inactive for a while. Sometimes they would take action right away. They would monitor the different emails and stuff like that. They could be either monitoring the email to then divert transfer, or they could be implementing malware, freezing the data, encrypt it, and then asking for ransomware. So no one is safe from that. Like small, medium businesses that don't have IT team are going to be really vulnerable to that. So they might feel I'm not going to be a target because I'm too small. But the reason is with AI, everything is automated. They don't care if you're small or not. If they get 1,000 here and 1,000 there, it adds up. So they don't really care how much they're going to get from you at some point. They just want as many people as they can. So everyone's going to be a target. And so yeah, pretty much they get into the system, they spread the malware, and then they ask for money, usually cryptocurrency. That's usually the way they do it. And some of the different groups, I've only recently been interested in learning about them. So these are the names that I've read most about them. So the main group, Lockbit has been disrupted technically. There has been a big Operation Kronos, that has tried to like disrupt them. So usually what happens, it's maybe this group has been dismantled, but the affiliate, the people that are working for that group are just going to move to a different group in the meantime, or they're going to rebuild it afterwards. So the operation that we're doing are really important, but sometimes they're only temporary because the actors are still like evolving and gathering elsewhere under a different name. So it's an ongoing problem to tackle, that's for sure. But yeah, so I put a little bit of like, what were their last activities, if we can say it that way. And the one that a lot of people like is the scam compounds or peak butchering. I know the topic has been going on quite a while on internet, LinkedIn, even in the media. Even in the States, there's been like hearings. The Chinese committee, something, has been doing hearing. Aaron West has been going to talk about the different scam compounds and the human trafficking going on. So that is not only a financial crime problem, it's also the human trafficking. And so yeah, so that's the big thing about scam compounds. Usually people are attracted or people are selected from, let's say they put an ads for a remote IT worker or something. They get people to apply for those IT jobs. They get them to move to Myanmar or whatever city. They confiscate their passport, and then they bring them into buildings that are guarded with heavily armed guards and stuff like that. And they're forced into scamming people multiple hours a day. And if they don't attain a certain like target, they just get beaten. So that's where we get like the human rights issue as well. So it's not just a money thing, it's also a human rights. And because those people are trafficked into doing it, some of them would be doing it voluntarily, but most of them would be doing it because they're coerced. So this one is the KK Park. So again, there has been a big takedown that has been done on KK Park in October, but the geopolitical situation in Myanmar is not necessarily the easiest. It's not necessarily, law enforcement has issue enforcing their laws. So basically the militia there is Karen, I keep forgetting, Karen something. So the militia is kind of helping the scams. They made it look like they took down the KK Park. They publicized the whole thing quite a lot. They made it look like they demolished many buildings, but like one of the people said just earlier, like there's a couple more ones that have just popped afterwards. So one of the sentences that a satellite analysis has shown like 27 scam centers afterward, like that are still active nearby. So basically they just move maybe 5 or 10 kilometers deeper in the forest, because usually those scam centers are in the middle of nowhere. They're not in the city. Organized crime just basically use the money to build an entire city in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, so they just get everyone there, and if they're targeted like that, they just go and move and start another one. But yeah, one of the things that is also interesting for me is that they were using Starlink. So basically that is US material used to facilitate crime. So that's going to be a political issue to address at some point, because I read some other stuff that like they are not only using the tools locally, they're using tools from different countries. So the countries would have to find a way to enforce that, like to monitor what use is done from their products at some point. So that's one thing that I found interesting as well.
I think with that as well, like one of the biggest, I think when I speak to people about it, when they hear about it for the first time, there's always an element of shock, and I think also a little element of guilt, maybe, for want of a better term, because you think of a traditional scammer, right, phoning people up and making these calls and trying to trick you, and it's, oh yeah, play along and try and like waste all their afternoon and do all this stuff, and then actually not realizing there's a huge underlying human trafficking element to this. And actually you realize it's not saying that one is a worse crime type than another, but I think that really adds this quite horrendous humanized element to what is going on. And then you're like, oh, it's not a group of people who are just like doubling down on a great script they've got. It's actually a really like vindictive and malicious group. So it's quite shocking the more I hear about that place and that case, and like all the great work that people, I think it was really helpful for the online OSINT community, the financial investigative community, because I think there's a lot of pooling in of people who just, it kind of reminds you why you actually get into this world in the first place.
Yeah, so one thing that I like about like what Erin West is doing is she's interviewing a lot of like survivors from those scam call centers. So it's interesting to see their perspective of like how it was going on inside. But yeah, and often one of the things that we would need to address more as law enforcement is yes, those people like did the crime. Sometimes some of them have been prosecuted, but mostly the judicial system tried to be understanding that the fact that they were trafficked in the first place and they didn't necessarily do the crime like voluntarily. So our system is pretty good at like trying to draw the line between the two. Sorry, I lost my train of thought with that.
No, but I get your point. It's really tough to work that fine line out. And I remember having spoke with some people doing like OSINT work, specifically finding pictures and like satellite images and like actually seeing the canes in the hands and like things that you mentioned there. And for anyone who doesn't know Erin West, the work that she does to expose these compounds, not only you know in these parts of the world but around, it starts to really make it a bigger thing. I think there's someone on the chat, so I think Kate, mentioning around the passport element, not the best start, is it, of like, oh yeah, this job that I was definitely not forced to do, they took my passport from me and never gave it back. So it's not, it's a whole racket.
But yeah, I found my idea back. So basically, it's just what I wanted to say is like all those victims that we're able to get a hold on, or like that we're able to interview as law enforcement, we would need to take into consideration that the information that they can provide is really useful to be able to identify the perpetrator. Sorry, the French in me. So basically any information that they can provide on what were their tactics, what were their location, what were the main responsible for those scam compounds. So they have a lot of intel that we should leverage. And I don't feel like it has necessarily been done enough. I mean, I'm not investigating that like directly myself, but I feel like we should be doing a little bit more into getting the information out of those people, because if we correlate all that information, I feel like we would be able to target a little bit more the main actors behind that.
And I suspect some of those individuals are vulnerable as well, Julie, right? So they're not always necessarily comfortable about coming forward and presenting, you know, as a witness in court. Yeah,
that's totally fair. So some of them would be willing to talk, some would not, but those who would be willing to do it, we should definitely give them like a chance to speak out for them. And it's also a way for them to cope with what I mean, as a criminologist, it's also a way for them to kind of grieve or like cope with what has been done and to move on as well, sometime to talk about it. So that's one thing. This slide is pretty much just to emphasize that like how financial crime has evolved right now in geopolitical issue. It's just it's becoming like a global security issue, national security issue. A lot of those countries are leveraging scams and money laundering to do sanction evasion. So you would see Iran, you would see North Korea using that crypto laundering to buy weapons or different type of things that they couldn't be buying with regular currency. So that money from those type of crime is often transferred to do some different types of crimes. So we shouldn't see it just as scam or fraud, because it's only one component in a grander scheme, and that money is used elsewhere for something sometimes way far worse than the initial fraud that we're seeing. So yeah, so currently law enforcement is targeting the problem as isolated fraud, but eventually with the scale that is taking, the amplitude that it's taking, it's going to be literally an international issue, because like I said, the money from one country is draining to the other one and is literally financing doing some terrorist financing. So that's one of the big things. Let's see. Okay, so I'm just showing here what are the different type of ways that they could launder the money. So we have the traditional banking system. Usually they wouldn't go that way because there's the KYC, know your customer. So we have to go through IDs. So there's a way for us to identify the people transferring the money with that. The way that they would do it, some people might have heard about Awala, some people not. It's basically an informal system that you could transfer not money, but value from one country to the other one. And it's based on a system based on trust. It's really ancient. You could go and read about it. I wouldn't dig too much into it, but it's an informal system to transfer money through a different country. Again, digital, we have cryptocurrency, the mixers. We're going to go a little bit with mixers, stablecoin. Cross-chain, OTC, like I said, over-the-counter brokers. So we're going to go with cryptocurrency. So why people are mainly using cryptocurrency, the reason is because the traditional system, when you transfer money, there's always like sometimes minutes, hours, days between the transfers. And what they want is move the money as fast as possible. So cryptocurrency allows that, and also instant payment. And it's borderless, so you can just transfer it from any country within seconds. So literally, the person could be in Myanmar, the victim could be in the States. They transfer the money to UK, and then they transfer it to 5 different countries within an hour. So that's one of the main challenge for the investigator, is to be able to stop the money as soon as possible before it hops on different transaction like that, because cryptocurrency is pseudonymous. So people think that cryptocurrency could like shield their identity and stuff like that. It doesn't per se. The address is public. You wouldn't necessarily have the owner information. You would have the address that would be public and some technical information, but you could follow that money in different addresses. And when we could identify the person is when that person would bring that to an exchange and try to get the money out of the exchange. So usually, if the exchange is regulated, you would have some kind of KYC linked with it, with the exchange, so you could do a protection order and get the person's information from that exchange. But the thing is, when they hop that money from a different wallet to a different wallet, they try to do as many transactions as possible to confuse investigator. That's one thing. But they would also use the mixer that I mentioned, the other one. So the mixer, the chain hopping, and the privacy coin are the big things that we're facing with cryptocurrency. Basically, mixer is self-explanatory. It's tools that is going to gather a lot of money from different wallet. It's just going to shuffle the whole thing and spread it out. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to identify where the money was coming from and where you would see where the money is going, but not necessarily where it was coming from. So you could have a legit transaction, but you could also have a not so legit transaction, and you won't be able to tell which is which. So,
and it must also, the dynamics of having to get the data out of all the different, it's hard enough getting it out of the banks, I guess, right, Julie, but then having to get it out of all these different organizations as that crypto moves around the different wallets. I expect that's quite challenging as well for an investigator. Just seeing and sharing the data must be, onerous.
Yeah, and it totally depends on the exchange as well. Some would be more compliant with law enforcement, some would not be as compliant. And then again, over-the-counter brokers, some could do cash for crypto. So they would give you crypto, and privacy coin is actually a way to get crypto without having to do your KYC or giving your personal information. So a lot of criminals would go with the privacy coin for that, to hide their identity. So that is the main thing with crypto. So crypto per se is not necessarily illegal or criminal, but what they're doing with it to some extent will be. So so this one is just pretty much repeating a little bit the different types of finance that we could see, the chain hopping, why they would be using crypto for sanction evasion. One of the big one that they Tornado Cash, if you heard about it, has been sanctioned because it was a mixer and was responsible for laundering money from the Lazarus Group. So that's one of the things that they were able to do. But yeah, there's still many going on. But yeah, so now if we want to talk about AI, so I don't know if you want to jump into it, Sarah, at that point. But yeah, basically, so yeah, what AI is doing through all those different type of crimes. So it's just enabling it to be scaled way faster. And when you used to think about scams having typo in it or stuff like that, forget that. With AI, it's just if I'm able to write an email and have it corrected by ChatGPT, they definitely can. So so it's basically they can leverage AI for anything. They would do all their entire scam script through AI. They could tailor it to the victim, so they could basically have a conversation going on in AI, and AI answering what the persons want to hear, basically. And with the automation, they could just literally scale that to have multiple conversation going on. I saw a video from Kevin Hendricks. I think I posted about it. And basically the SIM farm. So people can legally buy thousands of SIM cards and use that to spoof and do phishing. And then afterwards, with AI and autonomous system, they could just have multiple phishing texts out there all at once. They could have multiple conversations going on different apps all at once. So what used to take one person, one conversation is just now one person, thousands of conversations.
It's crazy,
so
isn't it?
That's becoming dangerous.
Yeah. And I think it was publicly available information around the rollout of Fable 5, which was one of the new models that Claude was rolling out because its ability to hack. It's just frightening, isn't it? And when you've got sort of CEOs
to find the vulnerabilities,
who are saying you need more governance around AI. We're going faster than the governance is keeping up. That there's definitely something there in terms of a threat. But equally, it can be flipped on its head, right? It can be just as good at proactively going out there and finding fraud happening. So there are pros and cons to it.
Yeah, definitely. AI is able to find information for us in minutes on any topic. So it's basically able to do the same, to scrap the internet to find all the publicly available information for people to then start their social engineering campaign. So anything that you have on your Instagram, Facebook that is available and free and with a little bit of OSINT technique on the way, you can basically get so much about everyone. And if they have their profile not necessarily public, well, their family might not. So it might be public. And then you can just go on their family's website and find like their profile and get all the information. And also LinkedIn is a golden like mine as well for that. So.
Sure is, yeah. And I think the other thing is, it might be in your next slide, I'm not sure, Julie, but there's also then the challenges of, you know, flipping it on its head with AI, where yes, you can use it for a proactive tool to identify and sort of mitigate fraud, but also when you're using it as a reactive tool to pull together the evidence to build your case to prosecute. I think we are going to, and this is purely my opinion, but I think we are going to see a huge uptick in lawyers going after technology and saying, well, hold on a minute, did you use AI to get to this conclusion? And if you did, what model did you use? And how did you get to that kind of end solution? Because if you can't prove that and you're not using AI with guardrails and ethical AI and regulatory grade in certain parts of the globe, then your case is going to fall apart. So I think there are two sides to it for sure.
Yeah, AI is just like scaling at a speed that like where everyone's using AI, but no one has really been taught about how using it safely. Like I know some agencies like us, we have like little course yearly to do some things like that, but how many small businesses wouldn't really have those safeguards? So like to some extent is like everyone's responsibility to learn about it, but also there's a responsibility for the government like in the countries to like reinforce that as well.
I think that's something we're going to see a huge surge in, that the governance of AI, the guardrails, and as you say, the safeguarding around it. I think that's absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll skip a little bit the different stats, but basically, I can skip that one too. Let's see, it's not really relevant. What I want to emphasize is like how they're using AI to literally build persona as well. So like we said, they could just go and get your information online and build new identities, synthetic identities. So they would be using part of like your actual identity, and they would be like creating the rest using AI. So they would use part of the real information and create the rest. They could create false employment, ID. They could be using. So one of the things that I really liked, if we can say, from my different research is like they could use as low as like 3 seconds and get a decent sample of your voice to be able to reproduce it. So it used to be around 30 seconds, but some models has become apparently good enough that it could be as small as 3 seconds. So that pretty much means that I advise everyone that has their voicemail with their actual voice to remove it. So anything or like any post that you're doing online.
Or webinars.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking
it's like do what I say, not what I do is literally my motto these days. So I've been on YouTube,
Sorry,
I've been on a webinar. So basically no, it's totally fair. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, it's definitely do what I say, not what I do. But the thing is, when I do that, I advise people, if you're doing it, do it with knowing the consequences or the possible consequences. Be aware of what could go wrong. So if you're doing it, just make sure your profiles are private, or like if your voice is used to do some scam, maybe advise your family, try to get a safe word or all those other tricks, like warn your family that you might be used for some kind of scam and to not trust anything that comes with your voice unless they verify with a second channel. So that's usually the way to do it. Whenever there's something that seems a little bit off or that like require urgency, you need to pause, like step back a minute and verify through a different channel. It's pretty much what everyone should be advised these days.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few demos at, with big organizations where you've got kind of that deep fake of the CEO is on screen, giving a company update, and then he or she walks in, it just shows how impactful and frankly good AI is today.
Yeah, definitely, and that's one of the big ones. Yeah.
There's a great
Go on,
video I'm
Julie.
sure you've seen. I was gonna say there's a great video. I think like it's a video about the CEO of this like talking about the company, and then goes into loads of deep fake videos. Yeah, and then it's like, oh, the whole
Yeah.
thing's been faked. And you're like, ah, damn, they got me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and
just wanted to go back a few slides where I was going to compliment both yourself, SJ, and Julie, because actually you did something I've not seen anyone do yet, which is actually flip. I think the doom and gloom of AI is really easy to jump into because it does massively like makes things 10x, 100x, million x, whatever. But then also think how we are trying to now utilize that for positive as well. So it's like actually it's a really nice side of the same coin. We are kind of entering that era of the machines fighting the machines for sure. But yeah, I think it's a really good point that although yes, AI is not a tool widely used across all of law enforcement or investigation yet, I do think we are starting to see proper work and dedication going into making it much better before use, and I think we will start to catch up and utilize that to help tackle the people using it completely freely.
Definitely, and that's something that is going to come in the next few slides, which is why I'm going a little
so sorry.
fast forward. No, that's totally fine. I like a transition, so it's perfect. So yeah, I just put there a couple tools that people are using. Feel free to like do some research, go through it. But there's so many tools right now that people can, and they're actually legit tools. So you can literally use that just for you to have fun. Okay, this not so legit are like the Worm GPT or like the Fraud GPT. These are not legit. Don't do that. But yeah, so most of the other ones are actually ones that you can use and just have fun with. But they're used for like bad intents. So that's always the thing. AI could do great things, but AI could do so many bad things, which is why, okay, these are a couple of examples. Like we were talking about the CEO, Arab deepfake fraud is basically one. So just to explain it shortly before going to the other AI thing, is basically an employee was convinced with a like he received a business email compromise first, I think, and then he had meetings with multiple executives, but that were all deep fakes. And that person ended up like doing, I think, like almost 15 transactions, totalizing about like 25 million. So like CEO things has worked pretty well in the past for these as well. Let's do that. Okay. So yeah, so I mean, a lot of the investigator would already know that, but just a quick reminder, like basically we get the investigation, we analyze it, we do the asset tracing. If it's cryptocurrency, we would need judicial authorization to get the personal information. And then what is also one of the challenges, like whenever it's prosecution abroad, we would need the multilateral agreements. But yeah, where's my slide with the AI? I'm trying to find that one. Yeah, I'm trying to get to it without slipping too many slides. But yeah, basically, these are just like reminders what kind of digital evidence we would be needing to be able to prosecute digital crimes. I don't need to go through it. People can always go back and look at it. Yay, I think we're getting there. So, the investigation techniques are getting more technical or like modernized. So currently, a lot of people are doing open source intelligence. We currently have the suspicious transaction report. In Canada, it's FinTrack. In the US, it's FinCEN. So basically, whenever you have suspicious transaction or over $10,000, it's flagged. And then law enforcement could go and do their investigation. But yeah, so the new techniques, where is it? Yeah, that's the one I wanted. So basically the AI for good. So basically what AI is doing, how we're detecting fraud. So what I read at some point is like the bank now have a way to implement, I think that's is it the behavioral detection? So basically how you interact with your phone. So if you log in on your bank account on your phone and you usually spend that much time on the first page and then you click there and you do that and you transfer that much money from your account, you kind of create a pattern, and they have a way to kind of keep track of that. And if you diverge from that pattern, they could get a flag. I mean, I don't know the menu details of it, but that's something that I read that they're implementing in like some of the website or the bank. Not necessarily all of them, but that's a way that they could help preventing some types of fraud. Because if you think about that grandma that is doing cryptocurrency transfer of money, if she's transferring a big amount, which she doesn't do usually, and instead of doing it very slowly, she's doing it in a sense of urgency, they would see a difference in the like metadata or the metrics. So they could be using that as a flag. Yeah,
I guess as well, Julie, the sooner they can get on it, the less complex the crypto wallets are going across the different countries, different companies, and so with the proactive tools, they can, the investigators can get on it a lot quicker.
Yeah, so one way of doing it is like the bank creating an alert, like is it really you that want to do that? Sometime they could, I don't know, they could be sending an email or a text, or like is it you trying to do XYZ? Like Google says, is it you trying to connect at like that place? So that's one way of doing things. But also I think I heard that like they would be literally calling the lady and trying to talk her out of like transferring the crypto money sometime. But sometimes those people are deeply convinced that they're doing the right thing. So that's another thing that we're having to face, is people deeply convinced that they're doing the right thing when they're actually transferring cryptocurrency to a scammer. So that's the human problem, not the technical problem. But that's one way of doing it. But yeah, a lot of the OSINT is useful for that. So basically, all the analytics that you can do, all the different like correlation that you can do between the different wallets, different transaction, different names, different phone numbers, emails. It's all data that could be used. And one of the main thing is currently a lot of the agencies or law enforcement are still working in silos. We're trying to speed the intelligence sharing. Some countries have done better than others. Canada is still working on it. To some extent, we're currently doing a few like legislation changes with a couple of different bills that are being discussed to try to fast forward that. But basically, we need to improve the intelligence sharing to be able to have the bank share the data with law enforcement, to share the data with exchange and all of that. I think UK, you're pretty good. I was reviewing some of the laws in the UK, and I think you're actually one of the like greatest country on that topic. So let's see.
We're hoping to be. Yeah, I think we're not too bad. But
yeah,
I was reading around information sharing from the Financial Action Task Force recently just published that report.
I didn't have time.
Yeah. No,
I
it's all
didn't
good.
have time to go through it. That's gonna be my next step after that webinar.
There you go. Well, that's probably a good one to revisit at another time. I was just reading through that, and that's like the main element of it, isn't it? Is about really, really upping our game, basically, at information sharing. We'll talk about it forever in law enforcement, government agencies, investigative bodies, but I think throughout your presentation, it's all about the data, isn't it? And it's like sharing that in a safe, secure way where you can actually, get meaningful insights, not in an inquiry 3 years later, because that's the time you've got it through. But yeah, we'll stick a pin in that, Julie, because that might be one for a further conversation.
Definitely. And yeah, I know also the asset recovery or asset freezing, there's some countries that are really fast that they can directly like freeze the asset without like that much paperwork to go through. But I know some other countries, it's not as convenient, it's not as easy, so the money cannot be frozen as fast. So the money end up like moving and not being recoverable. So those are all things to address. The intelligence sharing upfront, but also the way to freeze the assets when the crime is actually occurring is the other one. But yeah, basically identify, restrain, seize, confiscate, and repatriate. So the only thing is cryptocurrency, I don't remember what's the percentage, but basically their recovery rate is really low. I think it's like below, isn't it like 5 or 10% at the most? I think it's the amount of money that people are actually, or the amount of people that are actually recovering some of the money or all of their money, it's pretty low. So that's why we need to be able to find a way to act sooner in the process, because once the money is gone, it's really hard to get it back afterward. But yeah, basically one of the things that I emphasize with that is with AI, it's just going to be harder and harder to trust what we see, what we hear. And it's also going to be hard for the evidence. So, I mean, if anything that you're seeing seems real, like, I mean, a lot of people are not even able to detect deepfakes when they see one. So I think the stats is like less than 50% of people are actually identifying correctly if it's a deepfake or not. So it's going to be the same if like evidence is being built up. So it's going to be hard eventually in court. We're going to have to prove that the evidence is not fake to some extent.
Yeah.
So which is going to be really complicated at some point, because anything that you used to just like screenshot online or pictures, like now you're going to have to prove the digital side of it to prove that it hasn't been corrupted. We were already doing it for some digital investigation, but now it's just going to be crazy how much that's been emphasized.
Which is why I think that regulatory grade AI, and as you say in the UK, that there is a lot of legislation and guidance being pulled together, as I know there is across the globe, and it's, you know, it's nigh on impossible to keep up because it's changing so fast. But that regulatory grade AI, where you're adding guardrails, you're writing the prompts to control those agents, so you give them, yes, you're not giving them as much kind of freedom to hallucinate, which is exactly what you want, and you're locking down what they've got access to. So you've got access to the legislation, you've got access to the case data, and you've got your LLM. Now go away and reason based on that data that you've got access to. That's, you know, and it's hard, like it's hard to build that. It's hard to lock it down. And you could say you lose some of that creativity that might come back from the response from the likes of the Chat GPT, but you can at least explain it, and you can present it in court in a way that, you know, is challengeable. I don't think that's a word, but people know what I mean. But, you know, and it adds to that kind of strength of the case. And I think that we're going to see a lot more around regulatory grade AI and putting guardrails in place.
Definitely. And like even just for lawyers, like I always laugh at the situation that happened in the States. I think one of the lawyers just built his own case, like with ChatGPT, ended up having most of the reference not being actual real case. So the lawyer just got crushed in court.
Someone actually mentioned that on the chat today. That it's like, oh come on. There's a line of we all might delve into the world of AI to help us out, but you know.
I mean, I'm not lying. I'm using AI, but I'm double and tripling check like what it comes up with. Like I'm not using it straight as it comes out. I'm double checking the facts. Like it helps me gather the information, but then I verify every single like statement afterward. I wouldn't just trust whatever it comes up with.
No, absolutely.
But so these are the challenges that we're gonna have. Like I said. Like we're updating legislation. Some countries are doing better than others. I know there's a lot of joint task force going on. There's a lot of cooperation between different countries that they've been doing a great job, but there's still improvement with some different countries that are not necessarily participating as much. Like I said, Myanmar might not be the country that collaborates the most for multiple reasons. They have any countries that might be corrupted, going on with corruption, or like geopolitical instability, it's going to be hard to enforce any type of follow-up or investigation in those countries. So internationally, we have to find a way to figure out a way to get the investigation done regardless of the country helping or not helping, because like the crimes are taking place, like the criminals are working from those countries because they know there's a gap. So we need to address that gap. And sharing evidence between different countries, that's also something that needs to be fast forward. And like I said, like figuring out if AI is real or not real, we have to emphasize that, because for evidence, it's going to be really important in the coming years. And what's going on if we don't catch up, pretty much the bottom line. So losses are just going to be exponential if we're not doing more right now. If we're not addressing the AI issue right now, it's just going to be going higher and higher. It's almost doubling sometime year by year. So, and it's also public trust. So if we're not able to do our investigation, or the banking system is not able to do the KYC because it just gets bypassed by AI, it's just public trust that gets eroded. So that's another thing. And organized crime is just going to expand if they're not stopped, for sure. I think that's pretty much it. We have to stop working in silos. We have to collaborate, share intelligence, put some safeguard for AI, because it's still a little bit wild how it's used out there. And that's about it. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think there's so much we could dig into. I think like with these topics, you know, we could spend a whole session on one slide, or at least I could. And I think what's really clear is we're kind of law enforcement globally versus organized crime are in an arms race now with AI, and we're definitely losing it at the moment. But I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think the importance of the guardrails, the importance of the explainability, and getting that right first will then allow a massive use case of that. And I think we will see that. It's really funny, like we've not been running these webinar series that long, less than a year, and on the first one we had genuinely so many comments like, you're never ever going to see AI ever in law enforcement, it's never going to be used in court, it's never going to be admissible or accessible. Now we're not there yet where it's fully ready to go, but actually it's already being used, it's already being accepted in court in certain instances with transcription softwares, with that kind of element of the world. So,
and honestly, Toby, like the UK are talking about changing the law, if you like, and advice and guidance to police forces to say use AI and things like disclosure, that they are being encouraged to build technology to support it, obviously in a safe, compliant, explainable, trustworthy way. But as you say, such a shift in 6 to 12 months, it's incredible.
Yeah, I think with AI, if you can identify an area where fundamentally humans are failing badly and regularly, then it's really worth considering bringing it in. And you don't need to speak to many detective sergeants across any criminal investigation team, whether that's Canada, the US, the UK, and say, what's your average detective like with disclosure? How much time do you spend like going through different court file submissions and saying, why have you included this, why are you including sensitive victim information, why haven't you done
this? Does it undermine, does it assist?
You know what I mean? So like there's elements of policing where it's a no-brainer, but I think when you bring it to this element, Julie, that you've done today, and actually think about crypto, huge amounts of fraudulent payments going through the banking systems, I think for me, like my head's spinning, but like the banking recognition, behavioral stuff, it's genius. Like stuff like that will actually help to stop a lot of this stuff in its tracks. So, as Jay says, the next generation of AI law enforcement, go after bad actors, be more streamlined. I don't know. I think this was a super positive webinar about AI, which is rare actually, because I think it does move often to the doom and gloom. So congratulations. I don't know if that was what you were going for, Julie, but I think that's really good.
And I mean, like, law enforcement has to catch up, but the other thing that I emphasize a lot is also the raising awareness for like the day-to-day people, because law enforcement can only go so far, but if people are not taught what to look for, they're just giving us more work too. So I feel like both sides need to be addressed. So we would need to tackle down on like more prevention, which is what I focus on my free time. It's pretty much just raising awareness on what's going on, what people should be looking for. And so this way they are less likely to get scammed in the first place, which gives us a bit of a break in the law enforcement side of things. And so yeah, it's something to be addressed from both sides, that's for sure. So
that's brilliant. Well, I think, look, in the interest of time, we've taken so much of your time up, Julie, but I think everyone on the call appreciates this, and all of those watching back on demand, which I'm sure there'll be many, many people doing so over the next week or so. But your QR code's on there. People can get in touch with you with questions, with ideas, with feedback, and likewise, any of us on the call, you can reach out. But thank you very much all for joining. And we hope to see you at the next one. And we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.